Hello, you are listening to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
In this episode, we're going to be tackling the idea of identity.
Right.
What is it? And maybe tackling is a little too strong of language.
Yeah.
We're going to be discussing identity.
Yes.
But before we jump into today's conversation, just want to say a huge thank you and let you know that this podcast is brought to you by the members over at Jensen AV Club. And we actually have a few new crew member shout outs. We have Martin Cliff joined us as a crew member. Florian Binkhofer has joined us as a crew member. A new staff member, Parker D. Roth. And our associate producers are Greg Stratton, Greg and Christy Jensen, and Karen Carmen. And this podcast is produced by Christian B. Schmidt.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a big thank you to all of the new members of the Jensen AV Club and all the members in general.
Yeah.
If you want to check out the Jensen AV Club and maybe become a member yourself and help us continue to make this all work takes resources.
Mm-hmm.
And to produce the things that we do to the level that we like to do them, it takes resources and they have to come from somewhere. And so by partnering with you guys, we're able to reduce the amount of consumerism that we play into, that we bring onto the podcast and put into our videos.
Yeah.
And we can really focus on creating the art that you love instead of finding brands that want to pay us and that we also align with, because those are few and far between.
Yeah.
So if you go over to jensenav.club, you can join for as little as $5 a month, just as a thank you, or you can jump into some higher tiers to get yourself access to exclusive bonus content, Sarah's monthly newsletter, a monthly live stream, a bunch of other things, and also all the way up to personal one-on-one coaching with either one of us. So if you want to check it out, again, just go over to jensenav.club. All right, so jumping into identity. I think we can probably start off like a little lighter and just...
Do you think identity is too heavy?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can start off with like a light question of what is identity?
Yeah. I half feel like I'm the wrong person for this conversation because I don't know.
Well, I mean, so if you were to, if identity, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Is your identity and who you are, you know, is it your job? Is it
Well,
the things you're interested in? Is it the food you eat? Is
right.
it like what ultimately makes up you?
I think that it's really weird because I think identity is all of those things, but also definitely is not any of those things. You know what I mean? It's like identity is kind of this elusive thing to me. And I mean, it does have to do with like, I mean, you are who you are, right? So like your interests and your traits and your whatever is going to be different than mine. And that is your identity. But at the same time, there's something like so much deeper and so much more human that I feel like isn't describable. And that's actually what your identity is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I mean, well, if we stripped those things away.
Your interests and stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, take away your job.
Yeah.
Take away your, you know, hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Take away, let's say, even your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Take away your family. So whenever you're down to that, I think of like, one, you have your gender.
Yeah.
So obviously for me, I would identify as male. Mm-hmm. So that's part of my identity, is that I am a man. And then I am a white man. So
Right.
is that the core of my identity? Is that the external presentation of
No.
my humanness? Is that I am a light-skinned penis holder?
Okay. First of all, no. I would say those are identifiers.
I'm not holding my penis. I
Cody,
have one.
Stop. I I would say those are identifiers, not identity. Isn't that different?
Yeah, I mean, but
I
if
think
you,
identity is, again, it's like on a different level. It's like humanity. It's not a definable thing, I think. Or maybe what I'm trying to say is it's more mysterious and more beautiful than the practical.
Yeah.
I am male, I am whatever. Like, do you know? I don't know. I feel like I'm the wrong person for this conversation on so many levels.
I mean, if you took away the fact that, so we took all that stuff away.
Yeah.
Take away the fact that you are also white.
Mm-hmm.
Take away the fact that you're a female.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, is your identity found by stripping everything away
Mm-hmm.
and there's what's left? Or is your identity made up of the pieces of all of those things? And it's a conglomerate of you being a white female living in New York artist, Enneagram 4, like brown hair, brown eyes, like,
right.
you know, like where is it none of those things and all of those things?
Yes. That's what I think. Because I think that I think that you do get who you are from those things, right? Like, I mean, there's a piece of me that is finds a bit of identity in the fact that, like, I'm now living in New York City. Like, that says something about who I am, right? But then also that has nothing to do with me on a more human basic level.
Right.
So I think it's both and.
So the dictionary definition of identity is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is.
Yeah.
The characteristics determine who or what a person or thing is.
I think the question or the trouble I have with identity is that I have never had a strong identity. So, like, it's hard for me to answer that question.
Yeah.
You know?
So as I think about identity, it is very difficult for me
Mm-hmm.
to separate how I think about identity and my worldview of being a Christian.
Well, yes, because
And so-
Christianity is about finding your identity in God, right? So,
Right. So as we continue this conversation, one, I will be talking about my personal thoughts and feelings about identity as it revolves around my identity in Christianity,
Mhm.
because I think ultimately that is a huge part of who I am, which I would venture
Right.
to say means that's a huge part of my identity. But I also want to explore identity in this topic with religious ambiguity of
Yeah.
just ultimately who are we? Like,
Yeah.
by removing,
right.
because whenever I think about the question of that I was posing of if you take away my job, take away friends, family, gender, sexuality, and
Right.
race, take away all those things, what is left? And for me, like personally, it is that it is what's left is my identity in Christ, my identity in my faith in Jesus, which is ultimately what I personally choose to put my identity in.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can get into those whys, at some point. But, I think that for me is kind of the core of this conversation for me.
Yeah. But I mean, I agree. But on the not the opposite side, but well, I'll just say I grew up in church, the same. I have the same beliefs as you, but I have never had a strong identity. So I don't know. And I'd like to say I try to find my identity in Jesus, but I don't know if that's true or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So because I don't know if it's true or not because I've never had a strong identity. So, I've never been very confident in who I am. So I don't know. I guess all that to say, I have the same beliefs as you, but I do think I might have a different viewpoint in identity. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
I mean, some of the things that I would say is whenever you put your identity in external validation, one of the main things though is whenever you put your identity in the validation of others.
I definitely think regardless, validation of others is a very big no.
Yeah, but that is I think the biggest thing that most people 100%. Find their identity in.
100%.
Is that if you are looking for who you are, the core of you is in external validation of, other man's opinion. It's like other humans' opinion is the fact that humans fail.
Right. Well,
so that means that whenever those people wrong you, you are hurt to your core.
Right.
Because you have built your core around those opinions, those ideas.
Well, I think we're also looking to other people to tell us who we are, mm-hmm. which is wrong because one, they can't know you like you know you, and they don't even know themselves. None of us actually. We're all running around looking for who we are. So to ask somebody else to tell you is futile. It's not going to work. And that's exactly what we're doing by seeking validation. Also, when you're seeking external validation, you're putting this stuff out there and you're like, please tell me I'm this, right? That's kind of what we're saying. We're like, please tell me that this is who I am. And when they come back with something different, you're like, oh, shoot. Mm-hmm. And then that's where you're hurt to the core because who you are to them is not who you were hoping you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, external validation is not the answer. I also think this is a common conversation, but putting your identity in a job is not who you are and will always disappoint. Because again, though, probably because of external circumstances, there's a obligation and a level of productivity and a level of producing that you have to do. And when you don't meet that takes your identity takes a hit. Mm-hmm. So I don't, yeah.
Yeah. I also think with the job, you are not a what.
Yeah, totally.
You are a who.
Yeah.
And so you are not what you do.
Right.
And whenever people, in our American society, we have this, the number one question you get is, maybe even before what's your name is,
yeah. What do you do?
What do you do? And whenever your identity is wrapped up in what you do, then your self-worth, your self-confidence is completely shaped by how others perceive what you do and how you perceive how well you are doing what you do.
Right.
And then maybe there's a moment in your life where what you do is taken away. You're fired, you're laid off, the industry you're in no longer exists, mm-hmm. whatever it is, the what you do is taken away. And whenever it is, you shouldn't be left feeling like you are no longer you. You no longer exist because
Right.
what you did is gone. And that's why, for me, I find it so important to find my validation, to find my identity
Mm-hmm.
in something that is much larger than myself and external, or I guess in other worldly human like things. Because at the end of the day, if something like that is taken away, something I love, like absolutely love what I do, but if what I do is taken away from me, I know that I still have the self-worth and self-confidence of being a child of God is
Of who you are.
yeah, of what, like, who, that's what I build my identity on, is that I am a child of God, and that there is nothing that can take that away from me, and there is nothing that can, I guess, add or that is the core.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with like a
Language.
beautiful sentence to talk about that.
Poetry.
Right.
It kind of goes with, there's a quote that I wish I could find it, but I couldn't find it. And it's basically a quote on that. It's saying like, you are not a writer. You are someone who writes.
Mm-hmm.
You are not a
banker.
A banker. Yeah. You are someone who does banking. Like, it's very much, I think we look at it we look at our professions the wrong way. Like, you are not a filmmaker. You are Cody, who is in film, right? Like,
who makes films.
Like, it's because, yeah, like, you are not what you do. You are who you are. I mean, I think what you do makes up a piece of who you are, but it is not the whole.
Yeah, but my question there would be, does what I do is being a filmmaker, does that make up a piece of my external identity, meaning my personality or my outward facing image of who Cody is?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it also an internal identity?
I mean, I would say a lot of the things that we do, that we project outward, are internal, right? Like, there's a reason that you became a filmmaker, designer, photographer, creative. It's like something internal that you are expressing outwardly. Right. I think it's a little more easy, at least, and maybe it's just because this is like the fields that we are in, but I think it's easier to get it all mixed up and create more creative fields, because art is kind of a piece of you. Like, the art that you put out, it's like a piece of, you're trying to express something. There's like a piece of you that you need to like express.
Right.
So it's kind of, I think, gets a little muddier in the creative arts field as far as like identity versus like what you do. But I still think, like, if you can figure out how to be like, I am a person who writes regardless of if this person agrees with what I write or not, or if this person likes what I write or not. It doesn't change the fact that I am a person who writes. If you can get to that place, that's golden.
Yeah. I think about this and I think, is there anything wrong with identifying with pieces of what you do? As long as you are ultimately aware?
I think it all depends on how you relate to it. I think there's nothing wrong. I mean, like, I 1000% don't know who I would be without my love of words. Like, legitimately, I don't really know. Like, it kind of terrifies me to even think about like not having them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's okay if like you identify, and not just like me writing words, but just words in general, like books and quotes and like beautiful sentences. Like, I don't know who I would be if I couldn't read those things, you know? So like, I don't think there's anything wrong with like identifying with pieces of that. It's just like how you identify. Again, I'm not a writer. I'm a person who writes, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I think about that, because I would say I do find a lot of my identity in creating.
Yeah, I mean, I would think you'd be crazy not to, because it's your whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there are all sorts of different types of creating that I love, but ultimately, like, I do find a lot of my identity in just creating things. And, I love visual mediums, but ultimately, like, if that was all stripped away, I think about, would I still be content with who I am?
Well, that's the question, right? Of like, okay, but what is identity? Is it, I think it's both and. I think it's all of the things that externally that make up who you are, but there's also things internally that make up who you are that you can't, I think is really difficult to put into words.
Yeah. I mean, so...
And I think it's easier for us to say like, oh, I'm a filmmaker.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, I'm a person. Like,
right. We don't know. It's hard because we don't have external language to describe who we are.
Yes.
Without describing what we do. If people, basically, there's no succinct way of doing that. To say who we are takes a relationship.
Yeah.
And you can't build a relationship at a networking event.
Right.
You build a connection.
Right.
And those connections are built on like-minded interest or like-minded goals, or you can get something out of each other.
Right. A mutual benefit.
And so it's like, whenever somebody, in those situations and you're talking about, getting to know somebody, you get to know them through their external validations or their external personality traits, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's more of a question that literally I'm just processing right now of just, is part of it because we don't have the language to express it?
I mean, I think a little bit of it is. I also think that vulnerability plays a part in there too. Like, when I meet someone, I'm not going to be like spilling my guts. Like I mean, maybe I would if I felt I kind of judge.
Safe.
Yeah. I mean, there have been a few times where I like meet someone and then 30 minutes later I'm telling them my whole life story, but that's rare. But I'm not going to meet someone and be like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. What are we all doing here? What's Earth about? Like, I'm not going to like talk about all of the existential things with somebody I just met. I'm going to say like, oh yeah, I'm a writer. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what that actually means is that I'm just trying to like figure out the answers, or maybe you figure out how to live with the questions. Like, but you can't say that to people, right?
Yeah.
That's terrifying. And not just terrifying for you to be that vulnerable, but like terrifying for the other person of like, who's this crazy? Like you don't want to.
It's like, I love you on the first date.
Yeah, you don't want to make somebody uncomfortable.
Also have 4 kids.
Yeah, you don't want to make somebody uncomfortable either. So I think that we're all like maybe even a little too scared to say who we are.
I, think about myself and the, being made to create, like, is what I feel is, I feel that who I was designed to be is somebody who creates. And thinking about, I say that I put my, identity and I put my core in Jesus. But if I was stripped of my ability to create and I had to be, I don't know, anything else to, make a living or whatever, would I truly be left with that and be like, I mean, I still am strong and self-confident and fulfilled in who I am in Christ. Like,
is that true?
Is that true?
Yeah.
Part of me thinks yes, part of me thinks no, because the part of me that thinks no is thinking about just the mere fact of taking away my ability to create.
Right.
but then I also have a lot of, I mean, there's, basically decades of like church tradition built into these opinions of just like who I am and who I was made to be through God. And like, I feel like God made me to, I feel like he made all of us to create.
Yes.
And, it would, as myself and as I believe that I am made in the image of God, the creator, it's like, there's all of these other thoughts that come in. So it's kind of a complicated notion to think about not being able to create, but
okay, well, let's just say like maybe your ability to create isn't taken away, but your ability to make a living on what you create is taken away, and so you have to go get a regular job that doesn't involve creativity, right? Like,
I mean, if I was like digging trenches or something, I feel like I would lose myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can definitely say that's true of me. I did that, right? Like, I was at a bank for 6 years and it killed me because I knew that wasn't me, but I couldn't figure out like how to be me, you know what I mean? And make money.
Yeah.
But that's part of a broken society system more so than it is like that gets away from the concept of identity. I think that's more like America, or that's like, economic systems and whatnot. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, but then I think about my what. So I am Cody and I feel that I was created to create, but then take the fact of me, of the what I do. Like, I am a YouTuber, I am a podcaster, I am a New Yorker, like those things. Part of that flip side that I was talking about of, do I truly find my identity in, Christ? But, I was pondering on this morning. It's like, yeah, those are pieces of my external identity, in the fact of like, if people ask like, what do you do, all that type of stuff, and where do you live, that, all those things. But just thinking about them, yes, I live in New York, or I am a New Yorker, like whatever, like that type of thing. But I'm failing at being a New Yorker. Like, I'm not, like, I'm here, but I'm not making it. I make YouTube videos, I am a YouTuber, but I'm failing at being a YouTuber, or like I haven't succeeded yet, I guess. And I've been doing it for a long time. Yeah. And like, I haven't made it as a filmmaker to the point where I can rest on my laurels, essentially, of like, just know that my livelihood, my income, the things that I'm safe. So if I was to like think about that, I am confident in who I am in all of these things, even though technically none of these things are actually successful to the point that others, that that it would be impressive to outward appearances, in the fact of like, oh my gosh, like you're rich, or you're doing that, or whatever.
Well, that goes to your point that external validation doesn't make you who you are. Yeah. Right.
And that's what I'm saying is like, I do. It's like, yes, I love doing all these things, and I do all of these things, and I make, those are my what's. But I am fully confident in who I am as Cody, because my identity is not wrapped up in the success of any of the what's. They're wrapped up in the success of my heart, in the success of my, who I am at my core, and the, like,
I also
how
think,
I love, whatever, things like that.
I also think you just are very blessed to have the self-confidence that you have. I think not very many people have that, or even know how to have that, myself included. So maybe that plays a part in that a little bit. I don't know. As far as like, is it that you're not placing your identity in those things, or is it just that you are self-confident?
But where does self-confidence come from?
Heck if I know. I don't have it, so I don't know.
Well, I know, but I think that self-confidence comes from knowing who you are.
Maybe.
Because it's confidence in self, because you ultimately know who you are.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I would say I know into the core of who I am.
But how? What does that even mean?
Well, because I know through my decades of experience and experiencing the mystical, I am fully confident in my personal belief in the existence of God. And so I have no problems, like, not that I don't ever doubt, or anything, or have doubts or anything like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I have had too many spiritual and mystical experiences to come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist. And
I have too, but I'm still not confident in that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think like we have the same beliefs, and I've experienced, we haven't experienced the same things, but like the same things. And I don't have that confidence. I don't have that like identity, strength, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't have that. Yeah. I have never had that. So like, I think it's something different than that. Or maybe it is that, and I just, who I am just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I find validation, or I find like pieces of who I am in like what I'm doing right now, which is sharing process. I think that is a core of who I am. But, and I could keep going and name like 10 other things of who I think that I am. But when you strip everything back, I think that core of being created to create by my creator is who I am, what I put all of my self-worth in and self-confidence in, and that is unwavering because not my belief is unwavering, but the thing I believe in is unwavering.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, because all of that is wrapped up in something much larger and the image of perfection, which I am not, then I'm okay with being imperfect, because ultimately my identity is in something I consider perfect.
Yeah. I think for me, or like I've always said this to you, like I don't know who I am, but I know who I'm not. And so I think maybe that's like, it's a different approach, I guess, maybe. Like I can't tell you who I am, but I can tell you what I've tried and hated.
Yeah.
Like, so I think, I don't know if that's just a different approach of finding an identity, or if that's just like personality differences or whatever. But I can't tell you who I am, but I can certainly tell you who I'm not.
Right.
I also feel like there's a piece of me that feels like I can't really tell you who I am until I've tried everything. Because how do I know? How do I know that I'm not supposed to be like I get on these like well, I guess they're just like dream fantasy whatevers. But for a long time I said like, I'm pretty sure it's my destiny to be a stand-up paddleboard person, like whatever you call them. A supper. Like I was like so passionate about it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is like my destiny is to be a stand-up paddleboarder. I don't really know why.
You've never even done it.
I've never even done it. Nor have I really. I do want to. I think it'd be a fun form of exercise. But like to say it's like my passion is kind of absurd. Or like I've decided, I don't even know how many times, that I'm going to be like a book cover designer, and I don't design, nor do I really have a huge passion to learn design. I wish I could. I wish it was natural to me, but I don't want to develop the skills badly enough, right? So I know I don't want to be a designer. I don't know why that's been a thing that I wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like but I feel like that's it for me, is like, I haven't tried everything, so I really can't tell you who I am. Which is wrong, because I'll never be able to try everything. Like, I know that it's wrong, but that's kind of like how I view it. Like, how can I tell you who I am if I haven't tried everything to know?
I mean, but those are all whats.
Well, yes, but that's what I'm saying. Like, at the core, I don't know who I am, because I don't know.
Like, I have changed my what many times.
Yeah, but you're still at the core. This is what I'm saying, I guess. I don't know how to know who I am at the core.
I mean, I obviously have my like beliefs in that, but I mean, it's essentially what I have done. So it's like not really, I don't think, productive to say, well, you are a daughter of Christ and you need to put
right.
your,
I mean, I logically already know that.
Yeah.
And I still feel this way, so.
Like, other than that, like, you know, it's kind of like we've talked about before. I have very simplistic solutions to things, like just do it.
Yeah, very practical
You
of
know,
you.
like, so whenever they're more complicated than, you know, I don't know, just do it. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I possess the experience to be able to articulate how you can
Right.
find deeper inner meaning. I can share my personal experience and how I have come to the point of being, you know, very self-confident in who I am.
Right.
But that, I mean, that's me. So
Yeah. I just think, yeah, I think those two things are probably the reason I'm not a very good person to speak on identity.
Well, I think you're a great person to speak on identity because I think that there are way more people like you than there are like me.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think that most people at least in my Western context of knowing people, most people find their identity in how much money they make.
Right.
Or they find their identity in what others think that how much money they make. And I think that's the core of it. You know, they ask like, what do you do? You know, and it's like, yeah, sometimes those are like, oh, you have a really interesting job, but ultimately it's like, how much money do you make? And these external motivations. You know, we were actually having a conversation with a group of friends earlier this week about, I said, I don't understand watch culture.
Yeah.
And just like really expensive watches, like people just buying, you know, $30,000 on the minimum, like watches. Like there are watches that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is like something, it's not that I don't understand a person being like highly interested in the art of watchmaking and they see the true like value of like this artisan piece of timekeeping and, you know, all of that type of stuff. I'm placing that aside because I think that most people, this is my opinion, I think that most people who spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on watches do not buy them because they are, you know, connoisseurs of the art of timepiece making.
Yeah.
What they are doing is saying, I'm rich.
Yeah.
Or I have the appearance of being rich.
Let me show you how rich I am.
And, you know, whenever we were having this conversation, someone said that, well, yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of, you can explain it like this, you know, it's like you have the ability to buy a car and, you know, show like, you know, can be able to buy that car. You know, and a watch is the same way. It's like you can't take your car into the meeting. So if you take your watch into the meeting, you know, people know.
It's a physical representation of your
income
Range
bracket
Rover or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. I'm saying I don't understand that. In culture is the fact that people feel as though you have to find your identity in how much money you make.
Yeah.
And that you are looking, you know, if you are in the room and you look over and you see somebody with a $50,000 watch, and now you are way more interested in talking to that person than you are the guy over there wearing a swatch. I think that, one, I think that that's unhealthy for you as a human. Two, I don't want to be like, I think about now, if I am the person and I bought a $50,000 watch and I'm wearing it, do I genuinely want people to come and talk to me and find out who I am and take an interest in who I am because of the amount of money that I make versus who I actually am?
I think that can kind of speak into the celebrity culture and why so many celebrities become very reclusive and like, you know, whatever, because they don't actually know who's there for them and who's there for their clout.
Exactly.
Which is a bummer.
And I think that, you know, so taking that example and rolling with it is whenever, you know, in that celebrity, you know, ideal, whenever you are finding your identity in being a celebrity, you have to keep up appearances. And you are constantly not what's the opposite of content? You're constantly not content in
I think there's not a. I think that's it.
Like you are constantly not content with what you have,
Right.
because you are finding so much validation in being a quote unquote celebrity or living a celebrity lifestyle. And so you have to, every celebrity culture has its own things. It's like for the rap celebrity culture, it's like
right.
the chains, it's like you got to be wearing $100,000 necklace to let people know I can afford $100,000, necklace, but in other things,
it's going to be a car
or a house bag. Or, whatever it is, those things, I guess the core of my belief in that is one, the psychology of it and just the fact that I don't know many people, or I don't see many examples of people who genuinely buy those things because they are so, bought into like the artistry of the thing.
I think that there can be some, and I also think on some level most people think that they are that, but we live in such a surface level life that nobody actually asks themselves the deeper questions. Like, it's not hard to figure out your motivations on things if you actually face who you are, but like none of us do that. So I think it's probably mostly that, is that we're just not even self-aware enough to realize how strange the culture is.
Yeah.
In that.
It reminds me of the like statistic or example of NFL players. And I don't remember the exact number, but it is a high percentage of people who retire from the NFL and are bankrupt within like 5 years, like very soon after. And these, are men who, made, depending on what level they are, but I think the average like salary or something is around $40 million, for their career of the average NFL career is 3 years. And
it's not like bad money,
and even if it's 40 million, 10 million, 5 million, like those are all numbers that shouldn't lead to bankruptcy with less than a decade, including your career time.
Yeah.
And it is, again, all built up in this image of identity.
I think it's identity and character. I think that you also, because when you're thrown into that kind of life, you almost have no accountability, and so you don't develop character. Mostly, I mean, you can't say that of all of them, but
yeah.
I think it's also a lack of character. But again, you can say that about everybody. Like, how do you build character? You build character by self-awareness, I feel like. And how many of us are actually self-aware?
Yeah.
Not that many.
Well, to kind of wrap that up, though, the reason that statistic is so high of so many of them going bankrupt is, in my opinion, most likely because their identity and their self-worth is wrapped up in the image or the way that others perceive them and their success. And so instead of saying, all right, I got 3 years, I made $25 million, I can buy this house for $300,000 and I can, live this life, and I can set myself up to live a really good life for the rest of my life. It's more so, but I am a NFL football player. Yeah. I need to be living in this $2 million mansion or more.
Probably more.
I need to have this, $40,000 watch. I need to be driving this car because that is what other people expect of me as an NFL player.
Well, and also if you think about it, when they retire, their identity is stripped away from them.
Right.
So what else do they have? They have their money, and they can they can make themselves feel important in that way. Right.
That would be, I mean, if you really just think about that, like if you are top level. Like you're
I mean,
a
you've
NFL
literally trained
pro.
your whole life to be an
You're
NFL player.
working like your whole life. You made it, and you are the top of your game, and you are now on this national level playing this game. Hopefully, I'm assuming you absolutely love, and you find so much identity. Like your identity is wrapped up in being a professional football player. But that identity only lasts you 3 years, and so whenever it's done,
And not only
what is left?
just 3 years, it's like prime of your life.
Right.
I mean, you're only, 30s? Most of them when they retire. Like, I think, isn't, I don't know football people.
I don't know.
Tom Brady is the...
Well, they're out. I think those sports talk with Cody and Sarah, they lie outside the statistics.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not normal.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's definitely late 20s, early 30s type,
So you think about your identity, who you are, the thing you've done your entire life is football.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to retire before you're even 40, Yeah. Like, you still have half your life to live. And also, it's not really, I mean, there are strategy and things like that you can apply to other places, but football doesn't really look, I mean, what are you going to do after that?
Yeah.
I just, there's, so they have money and that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess you could be a sports talker. What are they called?
right. But think about, a commentator,
Commentator,
announcer, whatever. But it's like, there's only so many of those spots to go around.
Totally. But that's what I'm saying. Like, how many options do you have to, continue in the space of your identity and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not that many, it doesn't seem.
So I posed the topic idea of talking about identity to the AV Club, and Parker said, how do you stay authentically you when you're surrounded by continual subconscious influence?
Yeah. I think, well, okay, so I'd say I don't know who I am, and it's true. And I have a struggle with identity. That's true. But I also, if there's one thing I value, it's authenticity. Mm-hmm. So I can feel when I'm not being authentic to myself, even if I don't know who that is, mm-hmm. which is very internal and ethereal and not really something tangible, but I think intuition is a really big part of that, and just knowing your heart. I feel like maybe it's self-awareness, but I feel like self-awareness and intuition, you can just feel when you're not being true, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
yeah, I mean, you definitely,
I think you just have to constantly be checking yourself and checking your motives and checking the why behind what you're identifying with, because you can tell when you're lying to yourself. It's impossible to lie to yourself, because even if you're lying to yourself, you're doing it. You're like, yeah, well, screw you. I'm going to do what I want, self, Mm-hmm. I think that's probably mostly it, is just I just have pretty good intuition, and I very highly value authenticity. So I can tell when I'm not being authentic to who I am.
Yeah.
Even when I don't know who I am is.
Yeah, I think that a lot of being not being authentically you, mm-hmm. I think comes from not truly being confident in who you are, because those external, basically, I think that whenever we struggle with that as humans, those are moments that we are finding too much identity or finding too much validation in the opinions of others. Mm-hmm. And that is why you're changing yourself. You're putting on a mask to fit in with those others. And so if you walk into a room of people who, let's just take the high school stereotypes, and let's say, you walk into a room of sports bros, and they love and identify with sports, and you are you love superhero culture and comic books and stuff like that. And whenever you're in that environment and you change yourself to, not talk about those things, to not present that part of who you are, and, start to take more of an interest in the things, the sports bros interest, I think a lot of that comes because you don't want to be rejected, and you care a lot about what that group of people thinks about you. And I'm not saying that it's easy to not think that. Like, I think that may be one of the hardest things to do as humans, is to truly find confidence in who you are and the things that that make up who you are, and not be afraid to be authentically you in all environments.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that some of that might even just be our primitive evolutionary brain, in the fact that if you don't fit, like primally, if you don't fit in with the in-group, then you may starve.
You're at risk.
You are at risk for violence. You are at risk for not, getting your fair share of the pie, let's say, and things like that. And so I think maybe a lot of those fears are primal fears that we have to like combat and know and realize. I don't need their validation for my personal health and safety.
I also think, though, a little bit of a counterpoint, not exactly, because I do agree with that wholeheartedly. But I think some of I think you can not know who you are and still be authentically you. I think mostly because I think that's me. I think I don't know who I am, but I don't do things that aren't me. I don't get involved with groups that I could care less about superficial things, or couldn't care less about superficial things. And I don't make a point of joining in on something that I just don't care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that though still stems from knowing who you are through knowing who you're not. Maybe it's a little different than identity. Yeah. Maybe because even though you feel as though at the core you don't know who you are, but at the same time you have already figured it out. You've already figured out, and you've already came to your own conclusion that you know that your identity is not found in the validation of others around you. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't affect you. It's like you've already basically checked that one off the list.
I guess maybe. That's true. I never thought about that.
And it's not that I think that you care what others think of you more than I do.
I think everybody does. Yes.
But at the same time, you aren't driven to action based on the validation of others.
That's true. I'll beat myself up about it a little bit, but I won't actually give in to peer pressure.
Yeah.
That is one thing about me. I have never really given in to peer pressure. I'm very against it because it feels inauthentic.
Right.
I'm not going to like something just because somebody else tells me to. Please. Yeah, I think just using intuition and just knowing your heart and self-awareness, you can tell when you're not being true to who you are. And that's how, and I think being honest with yourself about your shortcomings and your failures and your weaknesses is how you find your identity without letting external things affect it.
Yeah. Ultimately, what I believe is for true identity, for the person that you truly are, is putting it in something bigger than yourself.
Yes.
No matter what.
I think one of the keys to a fulfilling life is a story outside of you. Mm-hmm. I think regardless of your faith or anything like that, just like living for something that actually is bigger than anything you'll ever do is paramount to having a fulfilling life. I think it doesn't really make sense if you're just like chilling.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a book by Donald Miller that talks about like the elements of story, and that pretty much in Hollywood, in any story, there's like 7 character arcs, I guess is what they're called, like 7 plot lines, you know? And it's like, what makes a great story? It has to have these 5 or 6 or 7 elements that every single story plot line has. You know, there's the villain, there's the hero, there's the character arc, there's the tragic flaw, whatever they are. I don't know if any of those are the actual ones, but you know what I'm saying. In every story, the main character is part of a story bigger than themselves. They you know, like have to save the world and they can't do it on their own. They need their friends or whatever. Like they are part of a story that is bigger than themselves. And I think just apply that to life, you know, like you have to be part of a story that is bigger than you. Otherwise, your life will be unfulfilling in some way.
Or a constant battle, a constant chase, because
you're looking for that fulfillment and you're not finding it in yourself, because you never will. Like we're all flawed human beings,
and it drives you into, you know, it could drive you into, you know, like the hustle culture of like you need, like you can never take a break because you're finding so much validation in the what you're doing
in the work.
And that, you know, you have to do it 24/7, and if you ever take a day off, then you're getting behind. And whenever that is your identity, that's the way you're going to feel.
You're right.
Whenever it's, you know, your identity is wrapped up in the income bracket that you're in, that's every decision is going to be based off of that. And ultimately, the amount of money you make contributes so little to who you are,
and how happy you are.
Yeah. And so those are all things that are lies of our culture that many, many people have learned and shared, and yet almost all of us are like, yeah, but it's probably different for me.
Yeah.
And
totally.
so like,
well,
chase
I mean,
it
I
anyway.
even feel that way, like because the people who are sharing those things are the people who have made it, right? Like the celebrities who do have the millions of dollars, they're the ones saying like, hey, look, it's not actually as good as it seems. And you're like, yeah, but you're sitting with your millions, you know? And like, I'm over here with like dozens.
Yeah, but you also think about looking at people who are not in those income brackets, people that are, you know, one, either live in bad economic countries, and how content they are, how happy they are with everything that they have. 2, there are plenty of stories, even in America, of people who have found who they are outside of their job, and their contentment leads them to living a much happier life, you know, doing whatever, you know, lowly job example you want to throw in, than the millionaire and the CEOs at the top who can never, you know, find happiness because they're constantly searching for it in something that will never bring it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying it is hard to swallow it whenever the person who's telling you is sitting in their millions, you know? That's all. But I know it's true, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a reason that.
So, what is identity?
Literally don't know. It's both and neither or. Neither nor.
Yeah.
It's both and neither nor or either or.
Something.
It's everything and nothing.
Yeah. I think maybe that's it. Maybe that's the conclusion, is that that the downfall comes whenever you put your identity in one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Here's actually... Wow. Okay. I just had like 12 epiphanies. Okay. That reminds me of a quote. Again, I don't know who it's by and I don't know the whole thing, but basically it was saying that like a person should know how to change a flat tire, how to change a diaper, how to design, how to reconcile bank accounts, how to, whatever. There was like a list of like 20 or 30 things. And it said, at the end, it said mastery is for insects or something like that. But like people should be well-rounded individuals.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Like, not necessarily about identity, but I think it like coincides, like maybe your identity should be about learning as much as you can and like, being as kind as you can and like understanding other human beings. Maybe that's my identity. That sounds like me.
Is your identity in how you love?
Maybe. I will say that is like the most important thing to me is like how I treat my people. That is actually probably a core thing of me, is how I love. Not you, but
I've noticed.
Just kidding. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who I would be if people thought I was mean. That's true. Like if I have a crisis when somebody says that I'm a terrible thing instead of like, oh, you're so nice or kind or sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet is one that like I would call as an identifier of me. I've been called sweet my literal entire life.
Yep.
So like if somebody comes and says like, you're a terrible human being who manipulates others and blah, 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 I just like break down. Deer in headlights, like, oh my God, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably true.
And now you're my sweet, sweet lover.
Oh God.
I know.
Stop. That was a eye roll for the people listening.
An audio eye roll.
Yeah. Anyway, identity is everything and nothing, and anything you want it to be, but also not everything you want it to be.
I don't know if we have. I feel just as confident in what identity is as I started, but I mean, I'm pretty like the whole thing. It may be an anomaly.
Possible.
Because I feel pretty strong in identity.
Yeah.
Like, I always have.
You know what the thing about, and this is more of a church faith thing than like, outside of that. But people say like, oh, just put your identity in God, right? Like how? Nobody can tell you how, really. It's just like how everyone says like, oh, you just need to love yourself. Okay. Like I haven't been trying. You know what I mean? Like how do you just do it? Maybe that's my problem, is that there's no like definitive answers for how you find identity in something healthy, or how you, I don't know.
I mean, I think it comes with just seeking those things. It's almost like a little bit of like just starting, a little bit of faking it till you make it, and a little bit of genuinely seeking like those things for yourself. It's like, if it is, loving yourself, you may not believe it, but you can start with something. It's like, it's like, okay, let me look at this person who loves themselves well, and just start mimicking things that they do. It's like, oh, well, they work out, 5 times a week. It's like, well, maybe I'll just start there. I'll work out 5 times a week. I hate it. I hate myself, but I'm going to go do it and see if that changes something. And you're like, okay, well, they also, I don't know, do face masks and get massages, every quarter. It's like, I don't know, just throwing things out there, but It's like looking at people who do those things and emulate what they do until you truly believe it.
Yeah, maybe.
And then it's like, if you aren't truly, for the Christian side of it and finding your identity in God, it's like, well, if you aren't seeking after God, then you aren't going to magically find your identity in God.
I agree. Okay, I agree with that statement. I also agree that you can still not find your identity and be seeking him, though. Or at least in personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, I
You don't know. I know.
don't know.
I'm just saying, people say like, oh, just do this. Like, cool. Like, I haven't thought of that. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's more difficult than just a simple statement.
Oh, yeah, because it's always easier said than done.
Yeah.
But that's
or
the
it's
thing.
just like how people say like, well, like you said it to me this morning, like, oh, you just don't worry about that. Okay. Again, eye roll for the, like, it's just not even a thing that's, like, people say these statements, like those kinds of things, like, oh, just don't be anxious. Like, I don't really have control over that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or like you just need to love yourself or whatever. It's just so much. It's so ethereal and elusive and not like helpful, I guess, to say like, oh, all you need to do is this very simple thing that is not simple at all. But nobody can say like, okay, this is like, here's some practical advice of how you can start doing this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's never that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the practical advice is start.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just
like
saying
you're
it's
saying,
so
like,
elusive.
yes, it's like, yeah, right. It is way easier said than done, but that is the thing with everything. It's like if you truly want something, if you truly value something and you want change in your life, it's not going to be done by saying, it's going to be done by doing.
Right.
And so if you're stuck in anything, yes, you shouldn't start by doing the end result. You should start with step 1, step 1.1.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're being paralyzed by step 2, 3, 4, 5, or it's paralyzed by the end result instead of just doing step 1.1.
Right.
And I think that ultimately that's the practical advice is you have to start.
Yeah.
You have to make a change.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I'm just saying a statement of, okay, for example, let's not even use church, but the statement of, well, don't find identity in your job. Okay. But like what else?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like it's like so much easier to say don't find identity in your job than it is to say here's how you find identity. We can't articulate it. None of us can. And so I think like, you know, I just think, yeah, like that's nice or whatever and like a good reminder, but how do you even start finding that for yourself? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing is that no change ever comes about by stopping doing something.
Yeah.
It's by starting to do something else.
And there's a quote by, I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert, and she says like, no transformation happens no transformation can happen in your life until you get tired of your own bullshit.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. You just have to like let yourself, not in a, this is going to sound like in a very self-destructive, self-sabotaging way, but you kind of just have to let yourself hit rock bottom before you finally realize like, oh, okay, this sucks. I think I need to be different now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's all a process.
I mean, I think it's like, don't find your identity in what you do. It's not about, okay, I stopped finding identity in what I do.
Right.
It's more so you're going to have to go on a journey of finding identity somewhere else. And so it's like, you're not changing by not doing something. You're changing by doing something else.
Yeah.
And so looking for more sustainable and healthier things to put your identity into.
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately finding the core of yourself, I think is
Yeah.
really where it all is. Like you have to find your core and ultimately, find identity through that, for ultimate like self-actualization or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, I really don't know if we made it to any sort of answer, but we did have fun on the journey. If you have any other thoughts about identity, what is identity? Where does identity come from? Where does your identity come from? You can hit us up on the underneath the YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can tweet at us at deeplycuriousfm, or over on the Jensen AV Club. And if you want to help support this show and get deeper access and exclusive member perks, you can go over to jensenav.club.
Yes.
Thank you to all of our AV Club members, and we will see you next week.
Bye.